Well, hello, everybody. Excuse me. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to your critique of the week. It is Friday, March 3rd. So glad you could join me. So we got a pretty small crowd so far. Well, people are trickling in. Maybe something was wrong with the notifications. But it's great to see you all. Let's see. Cindy Gore's here. Dee Coleman, Tom Barlow, Dick Westheimer. Good to see you. Terry R., Clayton Clark, Spartacos, all the way from Cyprus. Good to see you there, Spartacos. Much better time for the critique of the week than the Rattlecast. Let's see, over on Facebook, J.D. Middleton here, Sarah Horn, Josh Williams, hey Josh, Meryl Class, Sharon Friendly is here, John Atkinson, Joe Barca, Katie Dozier, hey Katie. All right, so as people get around, we have a little bit of a change in the critique. The plan was to do Julie Snee and Lucy Viridian, but Lucy, I realized just earlier today, as I was setting things up, we did her like a month ago. So I decided to skip that. We're going to do Julie's poems, and then we're going to look back at the oldest submissions and do another, last chance before, sort of a last call for the oldest entries in the critique of the week. But as always, the goal of the critique is to give that workshop experience to everybody who might not have access to it, and just talk about poetry, what works, what doesn't, see how we can improve these poems so we can all learn in the process. The poets especially, but everybody watching. It's a great way to make your own poems better. Lisa Seidenberg is here. First time from Connecticut. Good to see you. Karen Marker from sunny Oakland. Yeah, it's sunny here in Wrightwood, California for the first time in a bit. All the snow's melting. If you hear any like sudden crashing, there's this time if the roof is steep enough, like a 45-degree angle maybe, the sun heats up the roof and then the whole just snow slides down. So every once in a while we hear these huge crashes from various people's roofs as like avalanches go by, because we do have over 7 feet of snow outside. But anyway, it's warm and fun in here, and it looks beautiful. It looks one of those days where it looks like it's super sunny and beautiful outside too. Anyway, let's get into some of these poems. So I decided I think always just use the do it online from now on. I think because it was really fun last week changing some poems around, and it is kind of, there's sort of a classic way of doing it by pen and like writing little notes, but being able to actually edit the poems maybe is even better. So I think I'm always going to do them just digitally from now on and see if that works. Let's see. So yeah, Jennifer Fox is here, Kim Patton. So it took a while for people to show up, but we're getting a good turnout now. So let's jump into this poem. So Julie Snee is the first poet up. And once again, if you'd like to participate in the critique of the week, have your poems critiqued, all you have to do is go to rattle.com/critique. There's a submittable link right there. Submit 2 poems. I pick out stuff. Sometimes I pick out stuff that's worth, like, interesting to talk about, that brings things up. Other times we just take the oldest poems that are there and go through them. So everybody in there will get some kind of feedback. So if you want some feedback on poems, submit them to the rattle.com/critique is the place to go. Okay, let's look at Julie Snee's poems first. Here we go. So the first poem is Soup. And again, this is Julie Snee. She didn't have any special questions, so let's just read the poem. Soup. After a tireless day, I want to come home and peel off my coat of skin, let my tissues simmer in a broth of blood and bile, while my bones rest, my soul steaming off the pot, carrying my scent along, the air currents in my home keep watch until I can piece myself back together so I don't come to a boil. So surreal, interesting poem here, Soup. Again, I like the title. I think the title works. Soup. Oops. Oh yeah, this is sometimes the pen jumps, and I can't figure out why, but that's okay. Soup. I think the title it's interesting because you don't. It sort of sets up. It's almost like a rope-a-dope kind of thing, where it sets you up to think it's about one thing and not as surreal. It seems pretty standard, and then we end up talking about something, making a soup of myself, which is really interesting. So if it was called Soup of Myself, I think that would be a detriment to the poem. But because the title is soup, it sort of gives us a little bit of a false lead that allows where it goes to be more of a surprise. So it's kind of a fun, as far as simple titles go, I think it works pretty well. After a tireless day, I want to come home and peel off my coat of skin. And so a great line break there. Oops, yeah, I can't do that. I have to go like that. Great line break there. With the coat of skin. Is this going to erase? Yeah, this is weird. It's only this document, so there's something with the formatting. I was playing it with it before the show started. But anyway, there's a great line break there. Peel off my coat of skin, because peeling off your coat is something you do when you come home from work, and so turning it to skin on that line break. I saw a thread. I think it was who was it? I saw a thread on Twitter at some point just this morning asking what the purpose of line breaks were, and people were all talking about it. And one of the things line breaks do is, in addition to pacing the poem and sort of setting up the way you're going to read and how much words and sounds are going to be highlighted, it also is like an element of surprise. And so this line break here, I peel off my coat, the break to skin is a surprising thing, which is anytime you get surprised, it's a stimulation. And so, it's a stimulating kind of line break there. Peel off my coat of skin, let my tissues simmer in a broth of blood and bile. The blood and bile is a sort of, I can't underline. That's annoying. I wish I could figure out why it's doing this. But anyway, the blood and bile is a bit of a cliche-ish. And I wonder if you could come up with something a little different. It sounds good, though, with the B's. The broth of blood and bile. But that works. It's one of those things that you see a lot in poems. There's a lot of blood and there's a lot of bile in a poem like this. And so, having something a little bit different would be better. I'm not sure what, but yeah. Oh, D. Coleman points out too. Yeah, tireless after a tireless day. And D. Coleman says, wondering if tireless meant say endless or tiring. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. So thanks for sharing that. Let's see if I can get it in the right plot. Nope. Out there. Nope. But the tireless day, I think this should be tiring day, after a tiring day, or an endless day. Let's see. Let my tissue simmer. Yeah. So blood and bile, I think you can come up with something a little bit different. I'm trying to think of a different word that starts with B that might work there. Because it is nice, the alliteration is nice between the broth, blood, and bile. Well, my bones rest, my soul steaming off the pot. I really like this part too, this my bones rest. So like imagining like taking off all my flesh and my bones sitting there resting on the couch. I think that's great. A great image there. Great imagery throughout the poem. Carrying my scent along the air currents in my home. I think the air currents in my home is a weak spot that I would do something different with. Yeah, my soul, and there's also, oops, didn't mean to do that. There's a way that my bones rest, my soul steaming off the pot, carrying my scent along, and then there's an implied punctuation here. It's a new sentence. Well, my bones rest, my soul steaming off the pot, carrying my scent along the currents in my home, keep watch. Yeah, bread and bile. Yeah, bread and bile, says Bren LaFrancois. And yeah, maybe something like that. Bread and bile. Yeah, if it's... That'd be interesting. I don't know. We'll see. While my bones rest, there's a weird thing that's going on here. So my soul steaming off the pot, carrying my scent along the air currents, like that. That's like one, that's one sentence, and then in my home keep watch is like a separate sentence. So it's a little confusing the way it's written, and I'm not a big fan of the currents keeping watch. That's what I was trying to get at. So my soul steaming off the pot, carrying my scent along the air currents in my home. Or is this like a declarative statement, like you keep watch? Like who's keeping watch? Brain and bile, says Karen Mark. I kind of like brain and bile because that it implies like all the mental, the stuff that's going on in my head is going to be, I'm getting rid of that too. Like all the all the stuff I've been thinking about all day. I kind of like that. So let's just go with that, brain and bile. And now, my soul steaming out the pot, carrying my scent along the air currents in my home. Keep watch until I piece myself back together so I don't come to a boil. Yeah, the keep watch is just wrong. So let me just cut this. Monica Dobo says you would probably need more food elements then, as the author kept the body parts register. Yeah. And then, so I don't come to a boil, I think is a little bit too, yeah. Yeah. So I don't come to a boil. It feels to me a little too like explanatory. And I think like why you would want to do this is the question of the poem. And so I don't come to the boil is sort of like the answer to that question, but I think it's better left unsaid. So I would cut that too. And what we left with is soup. I wonder if I can get rid of these lines that are in the wrong place. Or erase somewhere. Yeah. But yeah, so what does the poem look like now? This drawing tool is just not working. Erase. Here comes the haiku, says Tom Barlow. Yeah. So I like it shortened up like this. Soup. After a tiring day, I want to come home and peel off my coat of skin, let my tissues simmer in a broth of brain and bile while my bones rest, my soul steaming off the pot, carrying my scent along the air currents in my home until I can piece myself back together. Does that work? I think that works a lot better. I wonder if you could shorten it even more. And we're really tightening this poem up, but it's a tight, short poem anyway. And we might as well. Yeah. So I think it works better like this. I think that last two lines was too explanatory. Let me see what people are saying over on Facebook. Sharon Friendly says, until I can piece myself back together, could probably start it. And I think that's a great suggestion, actually. So let's look at that. So if we, I'm going to, since I can't get rid of these lines right now, I'm going to do this because those lines are annoying. Oh, it keeps the lines too. There, that's how we get rid of them. Okay. That'll do it. All right. So Sharon Friendly says this could be the start instead of a tiring day. So what if it was like this, even better? What if it was like this? Soup. Until I can piece myself back together, I want to come home and peel off my coat of skin, let my tissues simmer in a broth of brain and bile while my bones rest, my soul steaming off the cot, carrying my scent along in the air currents. How about just that? Is that much tighter than the original? Soup. Until I can piece myself back together, I want to come home and peel off my coat of skin, let my tissues simmer in a broth of brine and bile while my bones rest, my soul steaming off the pot, carrying my scent along the air currents. And see how this version, maybe I should pull up the original. But this version allows you to sort of daydream after. It's almost like we talked when we were talking to Michael Dillon Welch about haiku, and where it cut whether or not a cut there is always present in a haiku. And he said that sometimes the cut can be after the poem. And, so the haiku, the actual cut of the haiku is after the end of the haiku. And then you sort of imagine what's going to be happening in the future. And so it sort of becomes a transition between the present of the haiku and the future. And that's the way it goes. And so here we have, you do the same kind of thing. Until I can piece myself back together, I want to come home and peel off my coat of skin, let my tissues simmer in a broth of brain and bile, while my bones rest, my soul steaming off the pot, carrying my scent along the air currents. That sort of leaves you with something to think and daydream about as you leave the poem. Let's see. So, Terry R. And Kim Patton doesn't like this ending. I like this ending better. Nate Jacobs says Marrow and Tomorrow could. So Morrow and Tomorrow could also make a brief appearance here, he says. Josh Williams says that, who says that? Yeah, Josh Williams says that last line could just be the currents and cut the air because it's implied. I think so too. Let's see. Okay. Well, I think. Yeah. For me, this works a lot better. So Katie Dozier says, I have it ending at the pot. Steam carries me a current to the table. Yeah. Andrew Jabrika says, yes, but if you leave the currents, could also imply water, currents, and river. I like the dual interpretation. Yeah. I think the carry me to the table is an interesting idea, too. It does feel like maybe it wants a little more, even as we cut things. I think, I don't know. To me, I like this ending better. And I know some people on YouTube are saying no. So Terry R says before the ending was moved to the beginning, it had a little bit of a story. Yeah. So Bren Lefrancois says, but now there is a contraction in the first 5 lines until I can piece myself together, followed by peel off, which is an undoing of the body rather than piecing it together. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, so Deb T says, I'm not sure about the new beginning. Yeah, I think the point about, piecing myself back together first doesn't really work. So let's, and what was, unfortunately I have to pull up the old version of the poem. So, the poem went like this originally. If you bear with me for 1 second. So the original line was just after a tireless day. And I think tireless is definitely wrong. Yeah. So after a tireless day is how it started. After a tireless day, I want to come home and peel off my coat of skin. I wonder if this should be the title. After a tireless day instead of soup. Katie Durr says, I come home from work and peel off my coat of skin, let my tissues simmer in the broth, and go on like that. I think maybe this... I think tireless is the wrong word. You know, it could be an endless or tiring. I think that's definitely wrong, though. But what if it was after a tiring day is the title? And then the poem is this. I want to come home and peel off my skin. I really like ending just on the currents, though. But, yeah. I don't know. So I think it's a fun poem to play with. I think we could probably do more, add more detail. Because what think about what works for this poem, which is the surrealness of that scene of boiling myself into a soup, and wanting that. The idea of wanting that is the interesting part of the poem. And so having more details about the soup, where we changed to brain and bile, which I think works better than blood and bile. But more of that, more details of what the soup would feel like and taste like, and get that soup a really rich kind of feeling, like an experiential, detail-rich thing. I think that's what we're missing in the poem. So, yeah. Well, anyway, let's move on to the next poem. I think with this, I don't know. We've carved it down a little bit, but I think going deeper, like Joe Buck says, yes, go deeper into the bowl. That's the strength, and we want to play up the strengths. The strengths where we're really engaged in the poem is when we get to experience the soup and the strangeness of that. And I think what the poem is leaving you hanging, as Dick Wistheimer said over on YouTube. Why does the poem exist? And what makes it work is that experience, that the strangeness of that is what works. Dick suggests a title like After an Endless Day of Meetings and Memos, or something like that is the title. Yeah. Yeah. And so let's go back to the soup. So soup was the title. Yeah. I don't know. Well, let's move along. I think we've tightened it up, and we've explained what we would like more of. And so I think that works. Let's go to the next poem. The next poem is The Bees. Again, this is your poem by Julie Snee. The Bees. My knee aches under the weight of body and mind. I've let too much build up around the vitals, but it helps cushion the blows I deal myself. I'm afraid if this keeps up for much longer, I will walk ever in circles like the ones carrying bags beneath my eyes. I can't see it, but you still think I look okay. You say I belong to the bees. That's interesting. So the bees. And there are a few. So again, this is a poem that's a skinny poem with no punctuation, and it works mostly. But there's a few places I trip up. And if you're going to have a poem like that, you really have to work on not confusing the reader by the lack of punctuation. So let's focus on that for a second. My knee aches under the weight of body and mind. And see, we have the hyphen here, which is the only piece of punctuation in the poem. I've let too much build up around the vitals, but it helps cushion the blows I deal myself. And so right here, I trip right here. The blows I deal with myself, I'm afraid if this keeps up for much longer, I will walk ever in circles like the ones carrying bags. So this whole section right here, I trip up because of the way the line breaks are spaced out and the lack of punctuation. So I think that should be smoothed out somehow. But it helps cushion the blows I deal myself. A lot of times in poems like this, you'll have stanza breaks as ways to have punctuation when you need it, but you're not using punctuation. So that's something you might want to consider. I'm afraid if this keeps up for much longer, I will walk ever in circles. I think maybe the line break. I think maybe it would work better if the line breaks were like this, then I wouldn't trip over this section. I'm afraid if this keeps up for much longer, I will walk ever in circles like the ones. It's because the clauses of the sentence are finished at the lines mostly, and so when they're not, it becomes difficult to read. So I think it works better like this. I'm afraid if this keeps up for much longer, I will walk ever in circles like the ones carrying bags beneath my eyes. And then again here, I trip up here because there feels like there should be a break. The sentence is over, but it doesn't seem that way the way it reads. So it trips me up. I'm afraid if this keeps up for much longer, I will walk ever in circles like the ones carrying bags beneath my eyes. I can't see it, but you still think I look okay. You say I belong to the bees. And so we have this introduction of the you here. And when I get to that point, I say, who is you all of a sudden, And then Deb says, I'm left a little confused, for example, when it says, if this keeps up much longer. It's not clear to me what this refers to. Yeah, and so it's a poem that's sort of like you think you know what's going on, and then things pop up out of nowhere. My knees ache under the weight of body and mind. And this feels too like spinning its wheels a little bit and not doing much. My knees ache under the weight of body and mind. Like knees ache is kind of a cliche, and then the body and mind doesn't really add a whole lot. And so I'm not sure if this is even necessary. I've let too much build up around the vitals, but it helps cushion the blows I deal myself. So we don't know a lot of what's going on here. I'm afraid if this keeps up for much longer, I will walk ever in circles like the ones carrying bags beneath my eyes. This is what, once this is fixed up so you can read it fine. I like this section the most. I'm afraid if this keeps up, we don't know what this is. This blows I deal myself, but what blows? Like, what are we talking about? I'm afraid if this keeps up for much longer, I will walk ever in circles like the ones carrying bags beneath my eyes. Again, there's good line breaks here because we don't know what to expect. Clayton Clark says I'd stick to the I and not jump to the you. And yeah, like if this was it still seems to work. There's a lot of I's in a row right here, but the you really throws you off because you're wondering who are we talking to all of a sudden. And it's such a short poem, but to introduce a new new character, which is what you is at the end of a poem, is confusing. It just feels like who. It's like one of those things where if you're like I always think of if you walk into a dark room and you think you're alone and you turn on a light and then there's someone sitting in the chair there. That's kind of the feel I get when a character is introduced that late in a poem that wasn't there before. I'm like, oh, there's someone here the whole time. I almost want to jump back. And that's kind of the micro experience of encountering that you. So if it's like this, I can't see, but I still think I look okay. I say I belong to the bees. You could even cut the I say. But I don't really know what's going on in this poem. Because the description of what was happening to start with is so vague that we don't have any kind of setup. The bees are just the ending. The bees are the ending line. And so we don't get anything extra by the title. And I'm not too sure. I'm left with this. I think this thing, I will walk ever in circles like the ones carrying bags that are beneath my eyes. I think that's a nice little nugget of the poem there. But what's around it doesn't give me a whole lot to work with, like emotionally or just in my imagination. And so I feel a little lost, and I don't know why. When you say, I don't know who you is, but when finally you says, I belong to the bees, I don't know why that is either. And so, yeah, so I'm left just sort of wanting more in this poem, more explanation of what's going on in a way that I can engage with. And so, and a lot of times we can do that with a title, by having a title that explains what's going on in the poem, or we can do, or bring out more detail here. My knees ache under the weight. Instead of that, generalization, specifically get into the details of what is going on here. and that might help. And Jed Atkinson says, yeah, I should have clarified this. So he says, his bags beneath my eyes, referring to bees carrying pollen in their bags on their legs. And yeah, I think so. I think that's why that line's interesting, I should say. Because bees have those little circle dances and they're carrying pollen, and that's how they show their map. Like they tell each other with those little bee dances, so they're walking in circles, and the circles are how far away and what direction the pollen is. And so that kind of bee dance is in the poem, but then they become bags beneath my eyes, which is a surprising thing. You're not expecting it to be that. So that's why I like those lines. And so that's why the bees come in here. But why do I belong to the bees? And what's the situation that's making me feel like I belong to the bees? Yeah, the wiggle dance. Yeah, waggle dance. Let's see. Jay Middleton says, I think it's a poem about aging and what's stored up. That's interesting. Joe Becker says, more about the bees metaphor, please. Yeah, and exactly. So this is the real heart of the poem, and that's the most interesting thing. And yet we only get a little bit of it. And so like we kind of didn't spend a lot of time on what was boiling on the stove and what that soup tasted like and smelled like and felt like and looked like. This metaphor is really interesting, but we don't expand on it very much. And so it leaves us a little bit lost. Let's see. Josh Williams says the poem should start with, I belong to the bees. And everything that follows should address that. Yeah. There's actually I think it was a ekphrastic challenge poem where there was a photo of a bee right here, like underneath someone's eye. I think, am I imagining that? So maybe this was written for that. But I do like Josh's suggestion here. I belong to the bees as the title, and then explaining why I belong to the bees. And you can start with this, I will walk. I mean, what if the title is this? I belong to the bees. Let's just make a new poem really quick. Here, I belong to the bees. That could be the title. Then, and then we start out here as the first line. I will walk ever in circles like the ones carrying bags beneath my eyes. And then you can have a sort of a litany with this. I will do this, and that's why I belong to the bees. And we can sort of explain that why I belong to the bees in the course of the poem. I think maybe that's what the poem wants to do, and it just hasn't found itself yet. I think that's a good suggestion, Josh. John Philip Johnson's here. I haven't seen him maybe ever on the Critique of the Week. Hey, John. And says, maybe keep the you, but introduce it early, and the bees dance together, so a plural is better for a way to enrich the bees bit. Yeah, that's true. So if we want to have the you, the problem is I don't really know what the poem's about. And so I don't know how important the you is. It's one of those things where the poem wasn't clear enough to let me know. So I'm not sure. But it'd be interesting to spin the poem off this way. Marguerite Doyle says, perhaps the you in the poem is not seeing the person as herself. Yeah. Anyway, I think we should move on. Let's see. One more gander over at YouTube. Spartacus says there's some beautiful lines in the poem, but it seems a bit crammed with many ideas and topics that struggle for space. Jennifer Fox says she works too hard. The speaker of the poem is working too hard. With the bees? Oh, are we lagging? Is that we're still talking about the soup? Okay. Okay, I think we have to move on. So I think the first poem, just to clear, I think the first poem is a working poem, but we could expand it with more detail. And I really like ending on just the currents and letting it float. I still think, even though it was me, Until I Piece Myself Together is too on the nose, maybe. But I But I think it's a poem that works and is ready to go with some addition and details. But I think the general structure works well. With the bees poem, I think I agree with Josh. I think that the poem hasn't found itself yet, and I think it works best if this were the title, and then we sort of dig into it because that's the most interesting thing, that metaphor, like Joe Barca said, that we want to hear. Dick Westheimer says both poems have an elements of secretiveness to me. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot that's being withheld, and we want to know the story. And so I think including more of the story and letting us in, because I think there are interesting ideas and images in both poems. But letting us in more would be helpful. Okay, let's move on to another poem. And these next ones are by, let me just switch to the next doc. This is by Killian. Does Killian include any questions or comments? Nope, so this is just Love Cubed. Love Cubed. And it's just one poem from Killian. We're going back and looking at the oldest poem submitted. So this one was submitted February 11th of last year. So let's get to this before it's too late. And maybe we should make it a little bigger too while we're here. Okay. So this is Love Cubed by Killian. Oh, and there's a date right there. April 10th, 2022. So it's hot off the press when Killian sent it. Love Cubed. This over here too. Okay. Love Cubed. I love putting things in boxes. Big boxes, little boxes. Boxes inside of boxes that I deposit in my closet. We put each other inside of boxes, small little black boxes that fit inside our pockets, made of the same technology as rockets, so we can blast each other from orbit. How morbid. Can we stop it? I see people through small boxes, boxes inside of boxes, meeting people from across the world who decide just to drop in and talk inside of boxes, argue inside of boxes, speak vitriolic nonsense just to feel validated through responses. Because I have to be right all the time inside a square, squared off for a fight, and I'm besides myself. I care so much about being tough that I can't bear the thought that I'm enough. So I look inside of boxes and put people just like me inside of boxes. I can put someone I just met into a box, put that box in a box, and put that box in my closet, deposit it next to my soul's opposite. A beautiful skin that never did fit. I threw it in a box where the moths tore the cloth to bits, a box in a closet next to Christmas decorations where it sits. It's not just my aesthetics, it is my identity, so I fold her into a box where I can have company, all in desperation to maintain toxic masculinity. These boxes I create to eliminate individuality, an attempt never ceasing to manufacture my reality, so I don't have to recognize the sovereign right of every woman to be exactly who she wants to be. I like to put people inside of boxes, cubes with skulls and bones and crosses, boxes with outsides labeled toxic, little black heart-shaped boxes that fit inside of living coffins, boxes inside of boxes, zombies talk as they walk dead, heart-shaped boxes, lock boxes, hanging from nooses and to unlock bliss. Souls trapped inside of lockets, so we pass each other lock pricks. In a closet is a chest where I locked away my heart. In the dark is where it sits apart from all my other broken parts. A battered heart, it's bruised, but still beating, not perfectly, but it's a start. We even meet inside of boxes, greet, eat, speak, laugh, love inside of boxes, speak excitedly to each other. We don't care if someone walks in. Maybe I can stop this toxic feeling that I am helpless. She snuck inside my chest and has given me a heart kiss. Is this love? If it is, I cannot stop it. No stopper for this bottle, and maybe that is what love is. I love putting things in boxes, big boxes, little boxes, boxes inside of boxes that I deposit in my closet. Heart-shaped lock boxes hanging from nooses to unlock bliss, souls trapped inside of lockets. So we already read this, but it's repeating. So we pass each other lock picks. I will fashion a skeleton key in the shape of a ring and call it my lock kit. And keep it in a box that fits inside my pocket, a locked box in the shape of my heart where I will deposit my locket. On her finger will forever sit a ring-shaped key for her to unlock it. With this ring, we will free each other from our boxes because finally we found someone to have authentic talks with. Open hearts, open boxes, and they leave us feeling breathless. I guess that would make love our perfect locksmith. We even meet inside of boxes, greet, eat, speak, laugh, love inside of boxes, speak excitedly to each other. We don't care if someone walks in. Heart-shaped lock boxes hang from nooses to unlock bliss, souls trapped inside of lockets, so we pass each other lock picks. And that's where the poem ends. I think there's really interesting wordplay in this, obviously. It reminds me of, it's a slamish poem, and it reminds me of Every Element is Relevant, which is a really cool slam poem from our slam issue. And what I would do with this one is shape it to be more, this Marlon O'Carey was the poet. And I'll play it for you in a minute. But the really interesting wordplay throughout, the rhymes, the slant rhymes between boxes, deposit, closet, like all those kind of things are really cool. But I think they're spread out too much and the poem goes on way too long. And then the repetitions, there's the whole stanzas that repeat. I'm just bored by that point and just begging you to cut those. So what we want to do with this poem is condense it, make it about half the length, but include all the fun wordplay. And then I think we'll have a great poem because it's really, really fun to read. But let's hear some of Marlon O'Carey's poem, Every Element is Relevant, which reminds me of this, and this is what I would shoot for, is to condense it into this kind of voice. So let's take a look at this one. So Marlon O'Carey, Every Element is Relevant.
Every element is relevant and significant, like a herd of African elephants marching slowly through the tenements, or similar to seeds submerged in sediment, I eventually emerged to serve as evidence of phantom menace, like my lame-ass ex-girlfriend who attempted to insult my intelligence, but she was merely a victim of her parents' inherited prejudice, and furthermore, she was jealous of this. My apparent penchant for dispensing sentences, a relentless effortlessness, but nevertheless, now I'm independent and reluctant to discuss those tragic events. I used to stay bent to prevent myself from venting these sentiments, but now my regimen includes a true testament of my existence, engineered with elegance and executed with eloquence. I'm on a quest for excellence, and rather than follow trends, I would rather set precedents like maybe the first Jamaican-born American elected president. But every element is relevant, and I'm constantly counting on consonants, trying to crack the constraints of cold cement. This is more than just a lyrical experiment. This is mental medicine I'm dispensing. Inside your minds, I'm fencing with ignorance, hoping I get a chance to displace it and replace it with statements like, every element is relevant. You can't erase if you don't face your latent racism, so now I'm searching for those subtle similarities between myself and the Chinaman in Tiananmen, or lower-class lesbian ladies living in Lebanon, and I'm finding them, wedged between the cracks embedded in the lies they tell me about my melanin. To hell with them. Racism, war, and corrupted governments, all that I could recommend is to keep peace prevalent and climb the mountaintops and keep on telling them that every element is relevant. So while you're strolling through the tenements, pondering those sacred elephants, remember this. I hate to sound repetitive, but every bit of our existence is compounded by essential percentages of positive and negative, so let it live. Blood, bones, and brain matter, we are all relatives and all relevant and all heaven-sent and all majestic instances of intensity. We are all meant to be mingling here amid indents at ease. Subjects suggestively strapped to our predicates. We are all delegates and all dedicated to the liberation of all continents, so keep this thought prominent. Memorize this every consonant, no matter what persuasion you may happen to represent. Black, white, Latino, Asian, affluent, or indigent. Every element is relevant.
Yes, that was Marlon O'Carey with Every Element is Relevant from Rattle's tribute to Slam. If you buy a copy, they're still available. There's a CD in the back. I almost forgot the word. CD. If you probably still have a CD player in your car or something, you could pop it in. Or your computer, but so you see how the poem really relies so much on those rhymes and that wordplay, and that's what makes the poem fun. But it's so condensed, and so it's like a constant stream, and it's that condensing the rhyme and the wordplay that makes it really fun, and then transitioning too. So we don't always have these elephant relevant, significant tenement sediment, that same rhyme going on, even though that's sort of like almost like the baseline beat of it is that sense. But then we get we turn to the alliteration here, the consonants counting on consonants, trying to crack the constraints of cold cement, and so we get these other little runs that are different from that same sort of, that rhyme sort of system that we have going, like the boxes locked in my closet, and so So the key here is to condense the poem into it, but then also have a little bit of variation within it, so we keep us entertained. And I think it works really well in Marlon O'Carey's poem here. Every element is relevant. Hope you enjoyed that. I was debating whether or not to play it for the full 2 minutes, but I think it's worth looking at because of the way it sort of evolves and changes and swings back around. And it was a really successful slam poem back in like the early, this was 20 years ago almost, that these poems were being performed, because they were poets that were sort of on the slam circuit. It's probably like a 2004 or 2005 poem, but it worked really well, and it worked because of the way that the language is condensed and all the wordplay going on. And I see the same kind of thing being a possibility for this Love Cubed. And I think Love Cubed is a cool title because I didn't know what it meant at first. Then we got on these boxes, and so everything's a box. I think that's a kind of cool idea. But the poem goes on way too long. And then there are all these lines. So I love putting things in boxes, big boxes, little boxes, boxes inside of boxes that I deposit in my closet. I think that's a great line. We put each other inside of boxes, and then the word boxes becomes a sort of a refrain. Like we keep hearing it, and every time it sort of stands out in the same way it would in a sestina or something. Is one of the N words where we keep hearing it over and over again. That every time that boxes comes in the different ways it shuffles through boxes, I think it's a fun word to say too, because it's such a harsh word, boxes. So that there's a lot of elements that really work here, but it goes on too far and isn't condensed enough. So I'm trying to find a section that was like that, but made of the same technology as rockets, so we can blast each other from orbit. How morbid, can we stop it? So I think that works good. I see people through small boxes inside of boxes. So repeating the boxes inside of boxes, I wouldn't do. That's the kind of thing I would cut. Like only do that once. Like have all these things, but only have the same rhyme and the same thing once, to tighten it up, because it feels repetitive. And we want to get it more condensed. Meeting people from across the world who decide just to drop in boxes is a cool, really far slant rhyme. I like that. Talk inside of boxes, argue inside of boxes, speak vitriolic nonsense just to feel validated through responses. So this section is like too clunky and loses the rhythm, so cut that down. Cut that out. I mean, this I might just say, and talk inside of boxes, argue inside of boxes, speak vitriolic nonsense. How would you cut that down? Probably just speak nonsense. Yeah, maybe just the vitriolic is the problem. So, talk inside of boxes, argue inside of boxes, speak nonsense just to feel validated through responses. Because I have to be right all the time inside a squared off for a fight, and I'm beside myself. I care so much about being tough that I can't bear the thought I'm enough. I think that tough and enough isn't a strong enough rhyme. So this section loses a lot of that momentum in the wordplay for me. I don't think that holds up, to the boxes. So I look inside of boxes. I put people just like me inside of boxes. I can put someone I just met into a box. I think shifting here to the singular, I think loses some of the magic. I would keep this. I can put people I just meet, or I can put people I just met inside of boxes. That's what I would say to keep that rhythm going. Put that box in a box and put that box in my closet. Again, we have the box in a closet, which we already had. And so I don't want to hear the same rhymes over and over again. So condense it so you're just saying the things once. It's not just my aesthetics, it's my identity. So I fold her into a box where I can have company. And so we get a little riff that's a little different, or a little riff that's different, all in desperation to maintain toxic masculinity. These boxes I create eliminate individuality. An attempt never ceasing to manufacture my reality. So I don't have to recognize the sovereign right of every woman to be exactly what she wants to be. So again, this is wordy, and we lose that. If you look back at the every element is relevant, it never loses the sense that there's a music and an intense rhythm going on, even as it shifts through. And here it gets wordy, and we lose that sense of music. So that's what I would cut back to, and keep it always in this voice and not repeat yourself. I like to put people inside of boxes so we get that repeat again. And it doesn't feel like a refrain. I think that's the issue. because it doesn't come up enough. There's not like a repetitiveness to a certain phrase. If every stanza, which we could do, if every stanza started out with, "I like to put people inside of boxes," or something like that, then it would feel like a refrain. We wouldn't get annoyed by it. But the way it's like, there's no consistency to it, doesn't let it work like a refrain. So it just feels like repetitive instead of refrain, which is different. Let's see. Cubes and skulls with crosses and bones, and boxes without sides labeled toxic. It continues, and you can see how far it's pushed, which is really fun. And then part of the fun of a poem like this is to see how far you can push that rhyme. And to boxes and toxic is great. Little black heart-shaped boxes that fit inside of coffins. It's great too. Boxes inside of boxes. Zombies talk as they walk. Dead. I think the dead probably should. There should be something better rhyming there. Heart-shaped lock boxes hang from nooses to unlock bliss. Souls trapped inside of lockets. Again, we get the locks and the lockpicks. I like that too. And then we get a lot of repetition here, and so I would cut that. So my thing is, the poem goes on too long. Make it one page, and make it and don't repeat yourself. And I think otherwise that works pretty well. There was a run here. Where was it? The toxic masculinity, and it becomes a kind of like political moralizing type. It sort of leans in that way, and so this section, I would find a way to say that it's a little more subtle, maybe. But otherwise, the main thing is just to condense this into a tighter, shorter poem that's more like 2 minutes to read instead of 4. Let's see. There's a lot of me talking. Let's see what everyone else is saying about this, though. Let's see. Joe Barker says repetition works well until it doesn't. Katie Dozier loves the title. Let's see. Okay, let me see if there's any other comments worth sharing here. So Katie Dozier said Sestina is an interesting idea. Sorry, I can't find who said that. But put poems about containers into one. Yeah, putting poems about containers into a container is a good idea. I mean, it's always nice to find a form that forces you to make decisions. Just David Kirby talks about even his weird, that the shape that he makes his poems, where he does that sort of indent kind of thing, even though they're long poems and they're free verse, forcing him to make decisions is what he does it for. And so too, if you did put it into something like a sestina, that could really work. And of course, the sestina is you can look up a sestina. Sarah Horn says it's a fun poem. Joe Barker says chisel away at the marble. There's gold here. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, so Clayton Kirk says really helpful comparison of the poems. Love the boxes, just need to cut and shape. Yeah, I mean that's all it is. It's just it's a poem in need of real more editing than we can do right here. Bren LeFrancois says he calls his girlfriend lame, which is ableist on his part, and then says she's a victim of her parents' prejudice. Sadly, some unexamined prejudice based on disability coming from him. That's interesting. There is that kind of, but we already talked about that. I think that's a little moralizing just in general. And Debchi says, I think it is accidentally repeating stanzas. Actually, I know that it's not because when I opened it before I showed it on screen, there were some comments, and one of them was, about that, and it wasn't. But so definitely don't repeat stanzas like that. I mean, it works in a song, but it doesn't work in in a poem. Okay, let's go to another poem we want to get through. So that was the only poem that Killian sent. Oh, that's Killian Feely, I should have said. And you can find Killian at killiancomes.wordpress.com, which is the website here. Although it says coming soon. But Killian Feely Comes Alive is a WordPress website that he included with this. So so check him out if you want more. And I really would love to see the condensed version of this poem, because I think there is, like Joe Barca said, there's a lot of gold hidden in them there hills. So that's really cool. Okay. Let's look at another poet, though. And can I go? Yeah, I gotta have to refresh my call here. So bear me with 1 minute. We'll do another poem or two. Jerry Stephenson is next, and so Jerry's not here, but you'll see him on the Rattlecast very often in the open lines. Let's see. Oh, it logs me out. So Minimal logs you out so much because they don't want people sharing accounts. But let's go to the next poem. All right. So this is Stains by Jerry Stevenson. One poem, no questions. So let's just take a look at it. Stains. And Jerry is G. Here, I'll just put this in the file too, so you can see how to spell Jerry if you want to look him up. Here we go. Here is the new poem. Oops, that's not right. We want this window. There you go. And Jerry Stevenson is spelled like this, or Stephenson, maybe I should say. Stephenson. So, Stains. The remains of spilled joys, picnics, dinners, wine, and coffee. Ear-marking ties from back in the days. Mustard on lapels, ketchup on lies. Hot sauce on cuffs tell just enough lipstick on collars. Hank Williams' song stuff. Blood on anything, anytime, anywhere. Blood never bodes promise of anything fair. Stains on beds, stains on floors, tell us of tales of what came before. These stories we may not want to be told can predicate what comes after the knowing the before. We get some interesting rhymes in this poem. Stains, the remains of spilled joys, picnics, dinners, wine, coffee. So we know what we're talking about with the title. It doesn't give us any extra, but it sets the stage anyway. The remains of spilled joys, picnics, dinners, wine, coffee. So we sort of get a little bit of a montage of what could be spilled there. Ear-marking ties from back in the days. Ear-marking ties. I'm not sure what that means exactly. From back in the days, mustard on lapels, ketchup on lies. So we're getting into the abstract with the, lies as stains. And then we have the rhyme here. And so I wonder why, if you're going to have a rhyme scheme that repeats, so we have this ties, lies, cuffs, stuff, then it makes me want to have it every stanza. I don't know why you would not do that if you're going to do it sometimes. And so we get, and so I would sort of, again, if you can have a container for the poem, like we just said, I think it was Katie who just said that having a poem, a container to push against, like forces you to make choices and makes the poem stronger. I think that would be a good container to have, a rhyme scheme like that. Anyway, hot sauce on cuffs tell just enough lipstick on collars. Hank Williams song stuff. I think maybe, I don't know if you need, because we know Hank Williams is he's such a famous singer. I don't know if you need songs, and the songs feel crammed in there. Lipstick on collars, Hank, like we know we were talking about songs there, so I think that's unnecessary. Blood, we had blood in the, every element is relevant. We had blood and bile there. I don't know if you noticed that. In addition to the first poem we were talking about, and here's blood again. So blood comes up a lot in poems, like I was saying. Blood on anything, anytime, anywhere. Blood never bodes promise of anything fair. And so here the rhyme is to the wear and fair, so the rhyme shifted. And it feels almost forced, even though it was shifted. So, stains on beds, stains on floors, tell us tales of what came before. These stories we may not want to be told can predicate what comes after. I'm not sure if that's the right word. Predicate is, is there a different definition besides for the part of speech? Yeah, or a predicate. Predicate? I don't know. I think maybe predict would work better. What comes after the knowing the before? Let's see what the... Jenny Milton says, blood can be a beginning as well as a remain. I think the poem needs to expand its remit. Katie Dozer points out, I think we can cut bodes and just add S to promise. Where was that? But I think, I was thinking something for that. Where is that? Is that not in this poem? Was that the last poem? Floor stains, blood. I can't find it right now. So Sarah Horn says, I feel like it's a bit vague and doesn't really take us anywhere. Third stanza. Where's the bodes? Why am I not seeing that? Oops, fourth stanza. Blood on anything, anytime, anywhere. Oh, there it is. Psh. Blood on anything, anytime, anywhere. Blood never bodes promise. Yeah, good point. So this definitely... Blood never promises is a much better line. Blood on anything, anytime, anywhere. Blood never promises. And I wonder, too, why not... What is that? Blood never promises anything fair. Then that doesn't sound forced for the rhyme. It feels natural for the rhyme that way. Yeah, there you go. Okay. So, over on... Yeah, I think, so for the predicate, I think everyone says maybe predict, or it might be prognosticate, says Deb T. I think maybe that's what happened, is it is sort of a mashup of those two words. But I think predict just works better. But the main thing with this poem is so the main thing with this poem is what Andrew DeBrica says to me. What comes after the knowing that knew the before? Oh, no, that's not the line. It's Sarah Horn. Says, I feel like it's a bit vague and doesn't really take us anywhere. And I think that's the issue with this poem, too. Like, it's an idea. I like the idea for the poem, which is that what all the messages that stains carry and what they can tell you about the future and whatnot. And I think that aspect of it works really well as something that could be used in a poem. It's a good sort of nugget to start with a poem, but it stays in the abstract. I think the mustard and lapels, the catch, like what lies are they? Like how can we like really flesh that out? That idea of the way that stains expose something about the future, which is what the poem is about. Like how can we really get into a concrete, specific details with that? Is what's missing in this poem. And so, Katie George says, I think the poem is strong without the last stanza. I love the images and sounds before. So the last stanza, is sort of a summary too. And if we just cut that, which is the suggestion here, then we're left with definitely a better ending, because we're repeating we're getting back to the stains, and stains on beds, stains on floors, tell us tales of what came before. I think I'll just end maybe there. And again, you have the floors before, so there's rhymes everywhere. And I think really condensing it into that form would help, but then also adding specific details. So, Joe Becker says the first 3 stanzas are so good. Someone said, should earmarking be one word? And I think so. Earmarking ties from back in the days, mustard on lapels, hot sauce on cuffs tell just enough, lipstick on collars, Hank Williams stuff. I really like the Hank Williams stuff line. I do. Jamin says stains are not always negative things. I think the poem could be richer if we explored this too. Yeah, that's a good point too. And so all the ways, I think it's an idea for a poem that has a lot of like things you could explore and dig deeper in, and then go. And the reason why lipstick on collars, Hank Williams stuff is so good is because Hank Williams is such a specific detail. And I think having more of that kind of thing is what the poem could really use. Let's see. Clayton Clark says too, Staines, love the idea, but agree it doesn't take off. Love the ketchup on lies thing. Yeah, so just push deeper into the metaphor, into what you're talking about, and the way that what Staines can show and the meaning of that. Okay, let's do one more. Why not? But it was Jerry Stephenson. Thanks, Jerry, for sharing that poem. Let's go next to who is next in line. So this is Yashti Agarwal. And Yashti says, how can I express my emotions via poem in a better way? What are changes you would suggest for this particular piece? I want to write poems in a more cryptic yet simple way. See, the cryptic, don't try to write poems in a cryptic way. That's the key. Using more metaphorical phrases. What are the best tips to achieve that? So it's a very general question on poems. And my suggestion too, never try to be cryptic. Like being cryptic, you can have the meaning of the poem can be ambiguous and let us think, and that'll be stimulating and make us a part of the experience. But the content of the poem can never be cryptic. It's just, we don't get engaged with something that's cryptic. And so the idea that poems should be is something that we really need to not let people think, because poems should not be cryptic. They should not be like ciphers to decode. They should not be general and abstract and vague so that they can be like universally related. We don't know what you're talking. We want to know what you're talking about. We want your story. We want to know what's going on. So do not be cryptic. But let's just pop this. Oops. I'm going to open up all the different ways people submit. Here, let's try it this way. That's better. So, is there a title? Oh, Humans is the title, even though it's only in the title field. And this is how you spell it. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce the name right. Yashti Agarwal. And the poem is actually called Humans. So let's do this. What are we? Creatures with a heart, beasts with sinful brain, emotional fools. Yet here we are, comprehending on the day. Double face or true self, no comparison between them, complexed with thoughts, perplexed with traumas, seeking for tranquil but racking our heads, confused mortals with wicked minds, is what we have become over this life. And so, like the note suggests, there's just no specific detail in the poem, and so it's really hard to engage with. Humans, what are we? Creatures with a heart, beasts with sinful brain, emotional fools, yet here we are. And so I think you could start a poem like this, say, what are we? Creatures with a heart, beasts with sinful brain. I mean, that's a little stilted in the way it's said, but ignore that aspect of it. Or just actually cut it. But let's just cut it, why not? But so you could say, what are we? Creatures with a heart, emotional fools, yet here we are. And then say where we are. Like say where's the story? What are you doing? What are you telling us? Like what is going on in your life? Because we really want to know. We don't need abstract, vague ways that we can connect to each other, because that's really not poetry. Like what we need is new ways to say things, fresh metaphors for things, and honest storytelling that shows the details and lets us step into your breath, which is what we're doing, but step into your shoes is a weaker metaphor for what we're actually doing when we're reading a poem. We want to step inside of you, the speaker, whoever the speaker is, even if it's someone personified. We want to step into that and experience what it's like to have your experiences. And so to do that, we need specificity. We don't need crypticness. We don't need vagueness. We need actual concrete details. That's why they're so powerful. So that would be my advice to this. You could start here, but then, yet we are here. Where are we? Like, tell us where we are. Yet we are here, sitting face to face in a cafe, and you're eating this and breaking up with me or whatever. Like, we want to know the actual facts of what's going on. And we're naturally drawn as human beings, speaking of humans, to listen to each other's stories. We want to learn. Like, we're these like little learning creatures that want to find patterns and then figure out how they relate to us and learn from them. And so hearing your stories is something we're all tuned to. So tell your story and don't be cryptic about it. Let's see. Is there anything else I could say? Perplexed with thoughts, perplexed with traumas, seeking for tranquil but racking our heads, confused mortals with wicked minds. Like how are the minds wicked? Like, don't just say wicked minds. Like, what is wicked? What thought of yours is wicked? Like, tell us. We want to know. Like, we really want to hear more about you. Like, we really do. Is what we have become over this life. And so, so that's just, we need concrete details. We need specificity. We need storytelling. We need to know what's going on. And we want that. Like, there's no reason to hold that back unless you're, afraid of saying it. But the fact that you're afraid of saying it and still saying it is what makes the whole thing compelling. There's a hint of danger in poems because we're revealing something that is difficult to reveal very often. And so that's one of the things that draws us to poetry as well. And so tell us the story. And that's how you can express emotions in a better way, is to actually tell the story, and not try to be general. Okay. So I think that answers those questions. Let's do one more, since that was really quick. And let's do the next poet up is Irene Neeland. And the poem is This land is my land. How much rhyme is too much rhyme? Irene asks. Need I stay in order? Can anyone offer any help with the rhythms? And then there's another poem, Already Gone. I'd love help adding some play with sound into this very prosy poem. So let's do this really quick. I know it's past the hour, but I have to go shovel more. So I don't want to do that. Okay. So let's take a look at this poem. Oops, that's not right. Sorry, you got to pick the window. And they're both titled the same thing. All right, there we go. Okay, this land here. Do this. That's better. This land is my land. This land is your land. No dent in your servitude when George was booed. Our great discoveries were your dying times. Our shipping docks, your auction blocks. Enlightenment, prologue, your captive slog. The fights we fought, fortresses forged, another tool to force your hurt. Our revolution delayed your hope. The Constitution, yet another slight, and in the flotsam of an unkinged, I think it should be unhinged, state, what freedom, or maybe it's just unkinged, of an unkinged state. Yeah, I guess it's just an unkinged state. What freedom when you had no vote? The books we loved left you out. On Normandy's banks, no generals ranked. In exchange for blues and swing, hoses and the fangs of dogs, red-lined real estate, our sign of hate. Oh, say, can you see what common sky this time to die? Cruel police and no relief. Can it be real how our country wants to heal? This is the poem, by the way. Irene, I hope I'm saying that right. Irene Neeland. Let's put that down so you can see it. So again, I think what we want, poetry is the music of speech. And what we want in a poem is to feel the music of speech, while having it heightened and feel extra sounds and rhythms and so it needs to have at least as much music as speaking does. And I think a lot of times when you get poems that rhyme, the real problem isn't the rhyme itself. It's that we stop writing like we talk and start forcing the rhyme in. And so there's a lot of sections here where it's, they're little things written to rhyme. And what we want to do when we're rhyming is make it feel like we're just talking and the rhymes are accidental. And so if you think of it like that, the rhyme works way better. So, on nobody's banks, no generals ranked. That's not how you would speak. Like, that's not a sentence that someone would actually say. And so you're building this voice of a speaker who has a musical way of speaking, and that's how you want to think of it, not as like I'm shoehorning these rhymes in. And so that's the issue with the rhyme, not the rhyme themselves, but the way that they have to be fit into the music of regular speech. And so way back in the beginning of Rattle, the very first, I don't know if you can see on the shelf, there's the very first Rattle with a little skinny chapbook. That was from a Jack Rapes workshop. His favorite motto for teaching a workshop is write like you talk. And that's really the basis of it. And so if you start by writing like you talk, and then build up from that, instead of trying to force things in, then that's the way to be much more engaging. Because like I was talking about with the last poem, we're drawn to story. We want to hear your story. We want the details. We're also drawn to just natural human speech, and poetry is the music of natural human speech. And so writing in a natural way is like the bedrock that you need to start with, and then build up more complications from that. And so when we talk about rhyme and how people don't like rhyme, really what they're talking about is the way it becomes unnatural speech. And I think that's the issue here. So when the rhymes come out spontaneously, let's see. So no dent in your servitude when George was booed. Our great discoveries were your dying times. Our shipping docks, your auction blocks. See, our shipping docks, your auction blocks. That's something that someone would actually say. Like, you could say that. And so I think the rhyme works really well there. But enlightenment prologue, your captive slog, is not something that somebody would just say naturally. And so it's forced to repeat the pattern of the rhyme that comes before. And so, so that's the thing with rhyme. Okay, let's see. Let me do... Dick Westheimer, when we're talking about how poems shouldn't be ciphers, and I haven't looked at the comments in a while, so sorry for that, but he says, what about Sylvia Plath's metaphor, which is actually a cipher? And he said, granted few verses Sylvia Plath. Let me look at that, because I don't know that poem. I think maybe that would be fun to talk about, because I don't really have anything more to say about this poem. It's just tell us a story in the way that you would naturally speak for that poem. But let me, let's look at Sylvia Plath's cipher. Or metaphors, I mean. Well, there's all these analysis. Where's the actual poem? Why is this so hard to find? If somebody has a link to, let's see, the actual poem. Everything on Google is just like Cliff Notes. There is a YouTube video where someone plays it.
When it comes to citing sources.
Hang on. Let's see. I can't play this because it's a whole YouTube
Pearls
video.
of wisdom.
Okay, well, if anybody has, if you can hear that poem, has anybody put in the notes yet? Let's see. Okay. Well, I think we'll move on from that. But if anybody wants to share that poem, I'm curious to read it. Maybe we can talk about it next week. Yeah, why is this poem so... It is. I wasted like a whole bunch of minutes of dead air trying to find... It seems like it would be really easy to find. But I find like 50 essays talking about the poem, but none even include the poem itself. So Andrea, as we always love to turn things into haiku. Andrea says, this land holds promise hostage. That's a great haiku, actually. Excellent work. Let's see. Or a suggestion from Andrea to make it a haibun, which would be interesting. So with this poem, let's just continue with this poem a little bit. This land is my land, this land is your land, which is from a song. And so unless it's going to tie into the song, I would not use it as the title because it sort of implies that it's going to be. And it's just the topic. No dent in your servitude when George was booed. Our great discoveries were your dying times, our shipping docks, your auction blocks. See, that's my favorite line. I like that a lot. The fights we fought, fortresses forged, and our tool to force your hurt. Who's the you? Who's the your? Our revolution delayed your hope. Are you talking to me? Who's the you in this poem is another thing I wonder. The books we loved left you out. On Normandy's banks, no generals ranked. Are those African Americans that we're talking about? Is that the you? Red line real estate, our sign of hate. Oh, say can you see? I guess the our is, yeah. Oh, say can you see? What common sky, this time to die. See, what common sky, this time to die is another one of those forced rhymes in there. The if the rhyme comes out naturally, it's fine. But if it's not, it doesn't. Can it be real how our country wants to heal? Here we go. Metaphors by Sylvia Plath. Let's check out this line. This is a poem, because I said poems can't be cryptic. I don't know this poem at all, so we'll see. But somebody, who found it? Sarah Horn. Thanks so much, Sarah. Here we go. Metaphors. I'm a riddle in 9 syllables, an elephant, a ponderous house, a melon strolling on 2 tendrils. Oh, red fruit, ivory, fine timbers, this loaf's big with its yeasty rising. Money's new minted in this fat purse. I'm a means, a stage, a cow and calf. I've eaten a bag of green apples, boarded the train. There's no getting off. So I wouldn't say, because it sets it up as a riddle. There's ways you can do anything, but just in general, not being cryptic. If you're like, here the poem is like, I'm being cryptic, let's play with that, which is much different than not wanting to reveal what you actually want to write about. And Sylvia Plath, of course, wrote, very directly what she was writing about very often. The majority of the time. And so having a poem that can be, there's a way in this poem that the meaning is sort of like right there to grab too, even though it's a riddle and you're kind of trying to piece it together as a cipher. But you still, there's a lot of meaning in things like money's new minted in this fat purse. Like that's a tangible thing, even though it's leading into what this riddle is and what we're talking about. So I think, there are exceptions to every rule. I guess is what I would say about that poem. Before we go, let me look at the other poem just to clear up Irene Nealon's submission here. Let's see. Yeah. So Dick Westheimer says too, maybe I should, he says 9 lines, 9 syllables each, 9 months. Oops. Where am I going? That one. No. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Okay. That one. Yeah, I'm a riddle in 9 syllables, an elephant. So I think we're talking about pregnancy. Is that the deal? I'm a riddle in 9 syllables, an elephant, a ponderous house, a melon strolling on 2 tendrils, a red fruit, ivory, fine timbers. This loaf's big with its yeasty rising. So these are all metaphors for that. Money's new minted in this fat purse. I'm a means, a stage, a cow and calf. I've eaten a bag of green apples, boarded the train. There's no getting off. But see how each one is still a metaphor. Like it's asking us, what is this a metaphor for? And that's different than not wanting to tell the story that you're talking about. I think playing with it is a different case. Okay, let's look at the other poem, Already Gone, really quickly. For those who are still sticking around. Here we go. Which one? This one. Already Gone. And for this poem, Irene Nealon says, I'd love help adding some play with sound into this very prosy poem. It's interesting that the prosy poem is the one with line breaks, and the poem that's very rhyming is a prose poem. Already gone. It might have been the mushrooms. See, already I like the opening line much more than anything in the last few poems, just because there's a story embedded already in it. Might have been the mushrooms. I think it's a great first line. But last night, watching the sunset from the door of M's military convoy truck turned confession booth, beauty overwhelmed everything else. We looked out at the sea and saw no one shining in the sky, Venus. It was the spring equinox. Rumors flew of bats and birds, mad cow disease. We had no idea whether we were in for a police state, with bodies piled in the streets, the corpses of the homeless or others we knew. Nothing we heard seemed to offer us hope, so we sat on the truck steps in an old harbor parking lot, looking out as beauty, watching the sea and the stars. I've got 400 miles worth of gas in this tank, Em said. Out in Louisiana, we're good enough cooks. Even a seagull tastes good when we're done. And we laughed because we felt so healthy, despite all the news, our ragged edge of the universe full of salt and so many animals. And so this poem, I think maybe there's just the file dropped a line break here. It seems like this should go on or something, maybe somewhere. But this poem, because it's telling story in a regular voice, it's so much more engaging than the other poem. Can you just see the difference? So when Irene asks, I love how adding play with sound in this very prosy poem. I think adding play with sound is like what you should avoid. I think there is music in natural speech. I mean, that's what poetry is. And I think that it's here. You don't want to add stuff that's artificial. You want it to all feel natural and organic, and then build up from that base and add more play maybe, but in a natural way. Just because you read a lot of poems and you can feel what the feel of language can do, and so let's see. So Already Gone. We'll look at it a little bit more. Already Gone's a pretty boring title and doesn't really add anything. So I think it may be about a different title. It might have been the mushrooms, but last night, watching the sunset from the door of Emma's military convoy, truck turned confession booth, beauty overwhelmed everything else. I think it's a great start. We looked out at the sea and saw no one shining in the sky. Venus, it was the spring equinox. Rumors flew of bats and birds, mad cow disease. Is this like a coronavirus, like pandemic poem? I mean, that's the sense I got, but I'm not sure if that's the accurate interpretation. I think the second sentence doesn't work as well as the first. We looked out at the sea and saw no one shining in the sky. I think there's a choppiness to the hyphen here, and I'm not sure why you need it. What if we did this, and then what if we just left it like this and dropped Venus too? I think that's just a distraction. So what? Yeah. So the spring equinox sets the time there. So we looked at the sea and saw no one shining in the sky. It was the spring equinox. Rumors flew of bats and birds. I'm not sure what mad cow disease has to do with it though. So I would probably cut that too, and just go with that. I think that's clutter. It just takes you in. It's one of those things where it takes you in a different direction. Yeah. So I just cut that. We had no idea whether we were in for a police state, with bodies piled in the streets, the corpses of the homeless or others we knew. Nothing. So there's a good. See how there's that. We had no idea, blah, blah, blah. And then the nothing we heard seemed... That's music. Like, that's the music of speech right there. It's going from that, we had no idea, and then nothing. That sentence structure is a kind of music. So I think, trying to force things in like rhyme is... You don't need to do that. And we find it more engaging when you don't. Even as much as I love rhyming poems and formal poetry, I think, anytime it's forced, it just doesn't work. So we don't want to add that. We had no idea whether we were in for a police state, with bodies piled on the streets, the corpses of the homeless or others we knew. Nothing we heard seemed to offer us hope, so we sat on the truck steps in an old harbor parking lot, looking out at a beauty, looking out at beauty, watching the sea and the stars. So we did repeat the sea and the stars. I'd like to have a different description of that than a repeat of what we said above at the very beginning. The beauty overwhelming everything. We have beauty again, and then the sea and the stars. It's a very similar. Can we find a different way to say that? I've got 400 miles worth of gas in this tank, M said. Out in Louisiana, we're good enough cooks, even a seagull tastes good. I think maybe the repetition of good could be better, or, could be removed. So I would do something different there, just to not repeat good. I mean, good is we want it to feel like natural speech, and that's something that might have been said, but the repetition of good diminishes that line a little bit. And we laughed because we felt so healthy despite all the news, our ragged edge of the universe full of salt and so many animals. And that leaves us with a lot to think about, too. So I really like the ending. I think this poem is really good. A couple things I would tighten up and get a better title. I think there's music in here just because we speak music. I would change this. We're good enough cooks, even a seagull, something different. Some different line here, just to make it a little more interesting. Yeah. I think the poem works really good. Let me see what everybody's saying, then we'll call it a day. So, who says that? So Joe Becker says, such a good opening line. I love it. Could it be the title? Yeah, and that's a good suggestion. And, yeah, and other people like that. Katie Dozier says, yeah, I love that. And then the poem begins as a continuation of the title. Yeah, I think that might be better. So maybe we should do that. Oops, might have been the mushroom. Make that the title. It might have been the mushrooms, but last night, watching the sunset from the door of M's military convoy, I think there should be a punctuation here. Like maybe a comma. Beauty overwhelmed everything else. We looked out and saw no one shining in the sky. I'm not sure if we need this either. Maybe we'll just cut that as well. No one shining in the sky, rumors of bats and birds. Does that work, or do you need the spring equinox? I mean, it's sort of that's one of the reasons why it makes me feel like it's a beginning of the coronavirus pandemic, is because because it was the spring when that started, and so that's what makes it feel like that. So maybe we do need that to set the time. We had no idea whether we were in for a police state with bodies. Yeah, yes, you do need that. We had no idea whether we were in for a police state with bodies piled on the streets, the corpses of the homeless or others we knew. I mean, just the details are really good. And then, there's a good rhythm to it. Nothing we heard seemed to offer us hope. So we sat on the truck steps in an old harbor parking lot looking out at beauty. Someone said, yeah, let me look at the... Okay. Clayton Clark says, love this poem, great ending. Yeah, everybody really likes this poem. I think it's pretty much good to go. Other than Karen Marker 2 says, felt like a cliche to repeat beauty in the sea and stars. Yeah, it's just, this is the one thing, and I can't really inject. I have to write the poem myself to add something new, but I want to... can we just cut that? And since we already introduced that beauty... Nothing we heard seemed to offer us hope, so we sat in the truck steps in an old harbor parking lot. Looking at, I think we should be looking out at something, but something different than what we've already said. And then the dialogue is worked in perfectly. We've got 400 miles worth of gas in the tank, because it doesn't explain really. M said, out in Louisiana, we're good enough cooks, even a seagull. I mean, it could be even a seagull tastes like, and then some good dish, or I'm not sure. But anyway, something better here. So these two lines are the only things to fix up. It's injecting actually new content, so I can't really revise it for anybody, but that's what I would be doing with that. And we laughed because we felt so healthy. The so healthy is great because we felt so healthy. Remember that feeling of like, I don't have the coronavirus, and appreciating that for the first, you don't really think of that until there's a pandemic. And then you really think like, oh, I am not feeling sick. Despite all the news, our ragged edge, I like the ragged edge of the university. It reminds me of the ragged claws on the floors of Silent Seas or whatever from Proof Rock. Our ragged edge of the universe full of salt and so many animals. And I like the way that sort of leaves it hanging there and lets you sort of ponder that image. There's a good ending on an image poem. So the only things left to fix, I think, just the taste good and the beauty watching the scene stars. There's something different in those two spots. Otherwise, it's great. Terry says, no, it's one thing. A military convoy truck. Yeah, you're right. There's something that it's a little too clunky in that section. So I think that needs some way of fixing it up. Maybe getting rid of the word military. There's like too many words in that section, so it's a lot. But what if we did that instead? Because convoy kind of implies military, and I think it's just one too many details. And so by breaking that up, I was thinking you could break up the details, but maybe it's better just drop military. So let's read it that way. It might have been the mushrooms, but last night watching the sunset from the door of M's convoy truck turned confession booth. Beauty overwhelmed everything else. Isn't that better? I think that's better. Okay. Sarah Horn suggests for this spot looking out across the bay. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, or some maybe description of the bay. But yeah, looking, if it was just looking at across the some kind of description that's interesting. Bay, but like that, I think that's what we want to go for. That's a good suggestion. And then for here, even a seagull I don't know, is edible. Even a seagull is yeah. Okay, well, I think we're going to wrap it up. I think we kind of get it. This poem is a little bit of tinkering, and I think it's good to go. We should maybe talk about the line breaks, too. I think if I look at a poem, before we go, I should do that. Because if I looked at this poem, it's better than I think it is just by looking at it. And it's because the way the lines, and even when I pasted it in, some of the lines were even longer than this. I think one was an accidental lack of break. I think it was like this. And I think that was just something got dropped. But this is how it was submitted. And I would see this poem from a distance, and I would think that the poet's like not even like trying. It's a messy shape to the poem. And it doesn't give you a feel of like confidence of like, I know what I'm doing when I'm writing this poem, which is one of the main things. I mean, you never get a second chance to make a first impression, right? The first impression of a poem is just how it looks without even reading a word. And if it looks like the poet has a certain like line length and knows what they're giving you, and cares about that kind of aesthetic appearance of the type on the page, it gives you a little more confidence going into the poem, thinking it might be something good. And so for a poem like this, which is just free verse, speaking, flowing out naturally, I would try to shape it in a way that makes it look, the line's just consistently length. So, we already cut this a little bit, but, just pulling this up, we had no idea whether we were in for a police state with bodies piled in the streets, the corpses of the homeless, or others we knew. Nothing we heard seemed to offer us hope, so we sat on the truck steps. I don't think you need a comma there. In an old Harvard parking lot looking out across the the shimmering bay. I don't know what. I've got 400 miles worth of gas in this tank, M said, so pull that up. I'd probably get rid of the out because we say out a bunch, but in Louisiana, we're good enough cooks, even a seagull, so you can pull that around like that. We can put the so healthy down. And then see how when you encounter the poem that's shaped like this, it looks like something you can be much more confident in, which gives you, it gives the speaker some kind of like credibility, some sense that I'm going to be enjoying this, And so I think just shaping it so it looks a little bit more like it's structured. Lisa Siedenberg says, I like out in. Yeah, I mean, the out in is sort of a colloquialism. Yeah, exactly. That's what she said as I was saying it. But we do have a lot of outs. And so, I don't know. We go either way on that, I guess. Let's see. Joe Booker says specific name of the bay for this bay. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was across the one I think of as Hudson Bay, is the biggest one. So across the Hudson, what if you just said that? Or whatever bay it is. I think that's a great suggestion. Let's see. Jane Milne says, I think if it's about coronavirus, it's over-exaggerated. I don't think so. I mean, the feeling of it at the very beginning was that who knows what was going on. But yeah, anyway, I should get going. So, oh my gosh, it's way later than I thought. I didn't expect this poem to be so interesting and good, though. I like this poem a lot, so we ended up talking about it way more than I should have. But thanks, everybody, for sticking around this long. It's been fun. I like to get through as many of these as I can. There's still like 100 in the queue, so it's good to get through some of them. Thanks for joining us and for sharing your thoughts on these. Joe Barca, I love this. So I was going to leave, but Joe Barca has this. Even a seagull. Look at this. I like this. Even a seagull. Instead of, where'd we go? Even a seagull, instead of tastes good when we're done, even a seagull looks good in a skillet. Look at the detail there of that. I think that's great. It's a great suggestion, Joe. And then okay, so we'll leave the out. We'll leave the out. Out in Louisiana, we're good enough cooks. Even a seagull looks good in a skillet. Or maybe not good. Looks fine in a skillet. Someone suggested fine. Just so you don't repeat the good. But out in Louisiana, we're good enough cooks. Even a seagull looks fine in a skillet. Or something like that. I think that's a good suggestion. Some kind of in a skillet is a great, because of the detail of that. Or I guess in Louisiana, what you would cook in some kind of big pot, right? For a more likely. I don't know, some kind of specificity like that, though. Okay, so we're really going to wrap up. Sorry. It might have been the mushrooms. Good poem. I like that a lot. The rhymes are too forced. So good stuff. And here, I mean, if we're going to work on rhyming poems, let's like make them actually formal with meter and things like that. But anyway, that is the critique for the day. We got through a bunch of stuff. Thanks, everybody, for joining me. Let's see. This week on the Rattlecast coming up, the guest is going to be, let's take a look at that. Next week's guest is going to be James Davis May. And James is just a brilliant poet. He's a finalist for the Rattle Poetry Prize. I've just been hearing rave reviews about this new book, Unusually Grand Ideas. Like Michael Mark has been begging me to have James Davis May on the show for a long time. Other people have just said this book is great. I haven't read it yet, but I'm looking forward to it. Love that cover, too. A beautiful book. Looking forward to that. Rattlecast number 184. The prompt for this week was I have to look it up because I can't remember. The prompt for this week on the open lines, if you'd like to participate, was to write a poem around it. No, that's wrong. I didn't update the website. Let's go over here and see what the prompt was. And then update the website right away. Prompt was, write a poem about a time you faced a moral dilemma. That's right. So, oops, I gotta turn this off. So write a poem about a time when you faced a moral dilemma, because we had Abby E. Murray was a guest. Her book was about being a pacifist with a soldier husband. So that's the kind of moral dilemma we're thinking of, a time where you had a decision to make that was based on morals, and you had to figure out your way through it. I think that's an interesting thing to write about. That'll be a lot of fun. Rattlecast number 184, James Davis May, Monday, March 6th, regular time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hope to see you then. Hope you have a great weekend. In the meantime, I'll talk to you later. Goodbye.